It's a pleasure this evening to welcome the very Reverend Dr. Cameron Forbes. Dr. Cameron Forbes, or Father Cameron Forbes, trained here in Melbourne at Corpus Christi Seminary and was ordained a priest in 2009 for the Melbourne Archdiocese. Before joining the seminary, he studied arts and law and worked in government and legal fields. He holds a doctoral degree in moral theology from the Alfonsianum Academy in Rome, and also in addition has musical qualifications. After serving as parish priest at Mentone Parkdale, Father Cameron commenced as the Rector of the Corpus Christi College from the beginning of this year. And we're indebted to have our special guest tonight. Would you please make welcome the very Reverend Dr. Cameron Forbes.
Thank you so much, Brian, for your very warm introduction. Now, it's a little difficult for a priest to give a speech that doesn't resemble a homily. So I hope you don't mind if I start with some words from the Bible. They come from the book of Isaiah, written in the 8th century BC. But listening to his words, they ring through the centuries, as fresh as if the prophet was saying them to us at this dinner tonight. In these words, the Lord asks Isaiah a very direct question. Here he says, "Whom shall I send? Who will go for us?" In other words, he's asking, who will save our people? And Isaiah answers straight off, almost without thinking. He says, "Here I am, Lord, send me." It's no surprise that this reading is so often chosen at ordinations, because it sums up the very call and response involved in God's invitation to holy orders, to diaconate, and to priesthood. It's a call that's freely made by God, and a call that is freely responded to, heartily supported by God's holy people. Now, this might seem a slightly heavy introduction to an otherwise gentle after-dinner speech, but it cuts to the heart of why we are gathered here tonight. God calls each of us to do something special, something beautiful with our lives, something which is special to Him, that only each of us can do. God gives each of us a mission, and tonight we come together to support our seminarians and priests, to thank them for their yes, and to affirm our continuing support for their role in the Church's saving mission. In the heart of every seminarian and priest, there still beats those words of Isaiah, "Here I am, Lord, send me." I'd like to thank you for inviting me to speak this evening. If I may say, I was slightly daunted to be asked to speak to such a distinguished audience. But I have to say, as the seminary rector, I was also pleased to be invited, because it gives me the opportunity to thank you directly for your support of our seminary and of our future priests, particularly to thank Archbishop Comensoli, to thank the Priest Support and Education Fund, Carmen and his committee, John and Barbara Ralph, the Knights of the Southern Cross, and others who help quietly behind the scenes. Indeed, all of you present here this evening. If I might be so bold as to ask, why are we here tonight? And I'm sure we all have the same answer. We're here tonight because we love the priesthood, because we want more priests. We want good priests. We want priests who are trained well. We want priests who love their work and, most importantly, who love the people they serve. All of us are engaged in a crucially important joint effort, the training, formation and support of priests. And since it began 24 years ago, the Priest Support and Education Fund has done a marvellous job, raising $1,400,000, a magnificent achievement. And where does that money go? Well, the short answer is that it helps with all sorts of things, but often it enables some bigger projects, and you've heard about one of them tonight already from Archbishop Peter. For instance, with your generous support, nearly all our seminarians were able to attend World Youth Day in Lisbon just a couple of weeks ago. And what an incredible experience it was. 1.5 million young Catholics coming together to celebrate, to share, and to learn about our faith. And how affirming to realise that there are so many young faithful around the world wanting to come together and draw strength from each other, united around our Holy Father. There's a great buzz in the seminary at the moment, and not only that, it's a buzz that's rippling, or should I say reverberating, much further than we might imagine. So many of the pilgrims, there were more than 500 from Melbourne alone, have kept in touch with our seminarians and chaplains, wanting to reflect on their experiences and seek guidance in living their faith in broader and deeper ways. Some of our pilgrims went straight to Lisbon. Others went through the Holy Land first to walk in the steps of Jesus, to bring the Gospels alive. And others, under the Archbishop Peter, went to the heart of the Church, to Rome. Among the many wonderful things we did, something we'll remember forever, as you've heard, was to have an audience with Pope Francis. It was a surprise. We were told we were visiting the Vatican for something that hadn't quite been sorted out. We sat down in a rather small room, and to our astonishment, in walked Pope Francis. And after the initial elation and shock, something dawned upon us. He was like a grandfather, friendly, smiling, and open. And he told us he'd like to spend some time with us and to ask whatever we wanted. And so for the next hour, mediated by Archbishop Peter, we had a fascinating discussion. As you can imagine, there were lots of questions. One of our seminarians, Greg Lewis, asked Pope Francis if he had any advice for young men and women discerning a vocation to the priesthood or religious life. And as he sometimes does, Pope Francis responded with a question of his own. "Why did you become a seminarian?" he said to Greg. And after Greg had given an answer which did us proud, Pope Francis talked about the importance of finding inner peace, of persisting in prayer, and the need for seminarians to be normal. And speaking of the need to be normal, I was a little relieved he made no mention of seminary rectors. And that leads me to another point. You might be wondering how one becomes a seminary rector. The answer is I have absolutely no idea. All I can tell you is that towards the end of last year, Archbishop Comensoli asked to see me. And after some preliminary chat, he asked if I would agree to become the next rector of Corpus Christi College. Being quite happy where I was and just having settled in as a parish priest, I offered a rather lame excuse and I said, "I can't. I've got a dog." And, well, the Archbishop politely told me that this wasn't a very good excuse and that it would be good for the seminary to have a dog. And so we now have Felix, the Irish Terrier. Everybody loves him, or at least those who don't haven't dared to tell me. A few days ago, Felix celebrated his second birthday, and the students held a party for Felix. And the only person who wasn't invited was the rector. Reflecting on his own priestly vocation, St. John Paul II described it as a gift and mystery. And that is the same for all priestly vocations. It's a gift because the grace to say yes comes from God. And it's a mystery because, especially in today's world, it seems to defy all logic. Priests come in all shapes and indeed sizes too. In my year group at the seminary, we comprised a real estate agent, a dance instructor, a university student, a car mechanic, someone who worked for directory assistance, 013, you might remember that, a lawyer, and a Vietnamese science teacher. All that we had in common was a sense of a call to serve Jesus as priests. And this would be the same all around the world, in every time and place. In our seminary at the moment, we have a similar diversity. God calls people to vocations in all shapes and sizes, but that vocation to serve, to baptise, to offer the sacrifice of the Mass, to witness the commitment of a couple to marriage, to anoint the sick, to lift the burden of sins, and to bury the dead. These things are common to the call of every priest. I think of those words of St. John Paul again, a gift and a mystery. Sometimes the ways of God are very mysterious indeed. Some of you might know that I didn't grow up in the Catholic faith. I attended an Anglican school where I joined the choir and began altar serving. And when I was 11 years old, the Anglican school chaplain asked me if I had been baptised. And to be honest, I didn't know. So I went home and I asked my parents. And so it was that I then asked to be baptised with the support of my parents. And a while later, the same school chaplain asked if I had ever thought of becoming a priest. I hadn't. But I did begin thinking, and quite a few years later, through the many twists and turns which life presents, and not without a little resistance, I said, "Here I am, Lord. I come to do your will." 14 years ago, I was ordained a Catholic priest. And also, through the many twists and turns which life presents, my old Anglican school chaplain, the one who encouraged my priestly vocation, himself became a Catholic priest. And in God's providence, a couple of years ago, I was assigned to be parish priest in the parish where he was working. And that was some 23 years after he had first suggested to me that I might have a priestly vocation. Last year, on the day Archbishop Peter announced I was to become the new rector of Corpus Christi College, I visited our seminary in Carlton for dinner. It turned out to be the Feast of St. Lawrence, the day I'd become a Catholic many years earlier. And I said to the seminarians and the staff that the most important decision in my life had been to be baptised. The second most important was to become a Catholic. And the third most important was to become a priest. And so tonight we come here to support the priesthood. Vatican II reminds us that by virtue of our baptism, we all share a common priesthood. We all have a special responsibility to live the gospel. But there'll always be a need for the ministerial priesthood, to celebrate the sacraments and to be invited in all humility into the most intimate moments of people's lives. Our life of faith is an effort in cooperation. And so, as Pope Francis reminded us pilgrims in Lisbon, we all need to work together. And that is why tonight's dinner is so vital and affirming for our Christian mission. Pope Francis refers to a gospel image, the fisherman's net being thrown out into the world as a great image for the church, a network of relationships, human, spiritual, and pastoral. He says, "Never a bishop without his priests and the people of God. Never a priest without his brother priests. And all of us together as the church, priests, consecrated men and women, and the lay faithful, never without others, never without the world. Without worldliness, to be sure, yet not without the world." There we have it. We all work together in the great commandment God has given us. Each of us play our part. And so I say it unashamedly. I love being a priest. And I think all the priests in the room, I'm confident, would say the same thing, that deeply in their heart they are so fulfilled and love being priests. It was so inspirational tonight to hear from Matt Kennedy how important priests have been in his life. Well, I say the same thing to all of you, how important the people that we serve are to us as well. I love being a priest, and I can't imagine doing anything else. I can't imagine doing anything which would fulfill me more. Every one of us has a special vocation that God has planned since the beginning of time. And each of us, in our own way, says to God, "Send me, Lord, I come to do your will." So, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for your generous support of our seminarians and future priests, of whom we are tremendously proud. And finally, might I ask that you continue to pray for us. We do need your prayers, and more is wrought by them than we might ever dream. So please do keep praying for our seminarians, and please ask the Lord to send us more, that loving and holy priests might care for this most beautiful part of his vineyard on earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Cameron. Beautifully said, and we're very privileged to have you as a part of tonight's proceedings, and wonderful words here this evening. Michael Casson is joining us now. Thank you, Michael.
Hi everyone, I'm Matthew Casson from Catholic Development Fund, and I just want to have a vote of thanks to Father Cameron. Thank you for your inspiring and illuminating words. I think what you said summed up really well for me. I think we're all here tonight because we love priests, we want more priests, we want priests, good priests, we want well-trained priests, we want priests who love their work and love the people they serve. We are especially grateful to you, Father Cameron, and I would like to thank you on behalf of everyone here tonight for your vital work in leading Corpus Christi College. And I just want to take this opportunity to talk about another good, well-trained priest who loved his work and loved the people he served. And it's a priest which had a special vocation in the life of Catholic Development Fund, or the Schools Provident Fund as it was originally founded. This story started back in the 1950s when Catholic schools were bursting at the seams with enrolments. There wasn't government grants and banks couldn't or wouldn't lend to grow the schools. So one young entrepreneurial energetic priest at Preston, Father Jim Wall, called his parishioners together and said, look, pull your money out of the bank, entrust it to me, I'll use the money to build the school and I'll pay you back over time with interest. And that's what he did. At the same time, there were about a dozen or so other parish priests in the diocese who wanted to solve the same problem. So they all got together and convinced the Archbishop to form the Schools Provident Fund. And Father Jim Wall, because of his special knack with money, was asked to come along and run the fund, and it's called the Schools Provident Fund. Now, it's grown enormously over the years. It'd be hard for Father Jim to recognise the fund now as it was then. It's now called the Catholic Development Fund. It's still grounded in parishes, anchored in parishes, but it not only helps to build schools, but also aged care, hospitals, social housing, and many other works at the church. It's also grown significantly, and we're now experiencing incredibly strong loan demand from many organisations. So in the tradition of Father Jim tonight, I want to ask you to consider pulling your money out of the bank and entrusting it to us. Now, we'll pay you a very good rate of interest. There's a flyer on your table which has, we've got a special rate of 5.55 for 12 months, and we promise you that we'll use all that money to help build schools, aged care, hospitals and social housing. And also for tonight, every account that gets open will donate $100 to the Priest Education Fund. So the flyers are on the table. Bernard Doherty from the Catholic Development Fund can help you open an account, so I'd encourage you to do so. Okay, thank you very much.